Justice Minister Ronald Lamola has praised the International Criminal Court for seeking arrest warrants for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, his defense chief, and 3 Hamas leaders. The ICC's chief prosecutor, Karim Khan, has accused Netanyahu and his defense minister, Yoav Gallant, of committing war crimes in Gaza. He also wants 3 top Hamas officials to be charged for the October 7th attack on the Israeli ground. For more on this, by this decision by the ICC's chief prosecutor, let's now bring in Amnesty International South Africa's executive director, Shenilla Mohamed, who's joining us this morning. Shenilla, thank you so much for making time for us. I want to start off here. Considering that the charges that have been laid out against Benjamin Netanyahu, as well as Minister Gallant, and also the charges against Hamas, it specifically starts on the 7th of October, but we know that the war in Gaza predates that many years.
Good morning, Aldrin, and good morning to your viewers. No, absolutely. And, you know, Amnesty has continuously called out the failure of the ICC to bring anyone to justice with regards to all the decades-long human rights violations and that have been happening in the occupied territories, Palestine and Israel. And but, you know, this is a step in the right direction. And, you know, this application, even though, you know, we may argue that it's a bit late in coming because, you know, we've lost over 30,000 people in the interim just from this one incident. But it is a crucial step towards justice. And it does send an important message to all parties in the conflict in Gaza and beyond that they will be held accountable for the devastation that they have waged on the peoples of Gaza and in Israel.
Yeah, and speaking about both sides as well, it seems as though that it was a cautious approach. It's almost as if the chief prosecutor is saying that, listen, if we are saying that there are thugs and there are criminals, there are thugs and criminals on both sides. There is thugs coming from Hamas and there are thugs coming from the Israeli government who need to be held accountable. However, though, Joe Biden is arguing that it is a false equivalence that is being made here. Even Hamas is making the same argument. They argue that it's almost like you are essentially equating the victim to the person who's perpetrating the crime.
Aldrin, it is a complicated matter, but, you know, the truth of the matter is no one is above the law and no one should be above international law. No leaders of armed groups, no government officials, elected or not, no military officials, regardless of the cause they're pursuing, no one is above the law. And, you know, what is happening now is that this application for arrest warrant is you know, the ICC prosecutor is going to continue the investigations. And, you know, we will see when the actual warrant of execution happens, you know, how they plan to take the accusations forward. But, you know, again, you know, from both sides, there's the same argument that it is not equal. But the truth of the matter is human life is human life, whether it is a Palestinian life or an Israeli life. And I think that, you know, from our side as Amnesty International, we are really about justice for all. And, you know, and all life is valuable. So, you know, if there have been violations on both sides, well, the Hamas side as well, then these do need to be brought to the court, and those that are responsible do need to be held to account. I know that, you know, people this is one issue that polarizes people, and obviously the majority of casualties have always been on the Palestinian side, but we can't argue that on October the 7th, Israeli life also was affected. People have died, hostages were taken, accusations have been made. And so it is important for investigations to happen and for the law to actually take its course, and whoever is guilty to be held accountable.
Yeah. Speak to us about the pre-trial process, and this is now, of course, the application that is being brought before the judges of the ICC to determine whether or not a warrant of arrest should be issued. So, if a warrant of arrest is not issued, does that mean that there will be no prosecution that takes place, or must the warrant of arrest first be in place?
Well, I think that, so now what's going to happen is that the ICC prosecutor has put in its application for arrest warrants. It is now for the pre-trial chamber to promptly review and decide on these applications for arrest warrants. Should it decide to go ahead and give permission for the arrest warrants, then these warrants will be issued. And then what it basically means is that if all states, including third states who are not members of the ICC, must respect this decision. And if the court judges approve any arrest warrants, all ICC states parties have to ensure the enforcement of these warrants. So what this means is that should any of these people enter any country that is a signatory to the ICC or a third state, then, they have to enforce the warrant. Now, should a warrant not be granted, then basically, yes, they will not be brought before the ICC because, basically the pre-trial chamber will be saying, well, there's not enough evidence here for us to be able to issue a warrant. Yeah. And so the ICC prosecutor will have to then continue the investigations until they produce enough evidence to put before the trial chamber, pre-trial chamber, for them to see the validity in issuing an arrest warrant.
Evidence, very, very important. We know with the ICJ case as well, one of the orders that came out was that ensuring that you protect the evidence or preserve the evidence, so there should be no destruction of the evidence. However, though, Mr. Khan, in an interview with the CNN's Christian Amanpour, says that we have not been allowed access into Gaza by the Israeli government. So I wonder then, how would he be able to collate all of the necessary evidence to put together a strong case before the pre-trial chamber to say that a warrant of arrest must be issued against Benjamin Netanyahu as well as the Prime Minister, and of course there are the allegations also being made against the Hamas leaders?
Well, I think yes, but the truth of the matter is, Eldrin, many people have been gathering evidence, and Amnesty International is one of them. I mean, evidence gathered by us, and we continue to gather evidence on the ground, and our evidence demonstrates how Israeli forces continue to flagrantly violate international humanitarian law, and it's a similar thing with Hamas. We've also been looking, we've also documented violations of international law by Hamas and other Palestinian groups on and since the 7th of October. So, I mean, while he may not have been allowed access, there are many organizations like ours who are on the ground who are actually gathering evidence. And I think that, it's just a question of, them looking at all the evidence that organizations like ourselves have put together and put out, and really being able to see whether or not any of that can be used. And I think that, there's enough evidence out there for them to be able to gather in order to put together a very, very strong case. And let's be honest, Eldrin, this has been playing out in the public space. But unfortunately, with social media, it's difficult. You still have to, test the evidence, see what is real, what is not, what has been made up. There's been a lot of stuff out there, but I think that there is evidence out there, and I think that they will have enough evidence, if they are so inclined, to be able to pursue this case at the ICC. And I think South Africa, in its case at the ICJ, has also provided a lot of evidence in their actual application. So I feel like, Karim Khan does have the evidence available to him, and I think he really does need to take that evidence and move forward with this case.
Thank you so much for your time. That was Amnesty International South Africa's Executive Director, Shenilla Mohamed.